These are the Marvel villains that were too dark for Disney, and the last two villains here are so disgustingly vile that I'm surprised they allowed them to be adapted this way. Because we're starting off with Ultron. Now, Ultron can't really be blamed for thinking the way he did, in my personal opinion. Like, when you really think about it, he caught a whiff of all the shit that plagues the world based on the way he was programmed with his defensive capabilities and reason that humans are nothing but a detriment to society. And look, bro is not wrong for believing that. Now, I'm not saying I'm some self-hating human, but come on, he has a valid point. Like, there have been wars and destruction that have started due to humans, so it's a valid claim. This one is on the board, Steve. But where things take a turn for the worse is in what he decides to do because of this mindset. As we see this maniacal metallic madman declare genocide on the world in order to establish his idea of true world peace. My boy went on the hub for 1 second and decided to eradicate the entire human species. Now that's some hater shit, bro. And we then see Ultron waste no time in acting out his plan. We see him chop off a dude's arm for comparing him to Tony Stark. We see him killing these poor underpaid doctors. Like, bro, look at how menacingly he just threatens this baddie.
Scream and your entire staff dies.
Ooh, not gonna lie, that would send chills right down to my sack if that ever happened to me. Like, he puts the literal fear of God in Natasha, of all people, as he tears through his old body with this new vibranium made one in front of her like he's the damn Kool-Aid man, constantly busting into everywhere. No doubt this dude was on demon time, bro, as his true plan was literally deciding to use Sokovia as a meteor to trigger a worldwide extinction and destroy everything and everyone. I'm not gonna lie, bro, if I was an Avenger and saw the enemy pulling off this type of shit, I'd pack it up. Like, it's been a fun ride, I'll see y'all in the afterlife. And even after the Avengers stopped his plan and all seemed lost for him, bro was not ready to accept his defeat just yet without a little sweet taste of victory, a little souvenir to take to the grave with him. And he caught the meanest slick on Quicksilver, turning him into a corpse, only for Wanda to sense that shit and spin back on him afterwards by ripping out this metal chode he has for a heart and literally crush it in front of him. Yo, if that kind of revenge on someone evil as Ultron wasn't enough, then I don't know what is for that kind of malice, bro. And Ultron was alive for what I think was a few days, and he was more motivated to nuke the entire world because of humans than I was to make this video. But next up we have Wanda. Now, unlike Ultron, Wanda's actions cannot be justified, and I'm talking specifically about what she did in Multiverse of Madness. Like, she was so heartbroken whenever she had to let her kids disappear like a fart in the wind at the end of WandaVision, but she then completely unlearns everything that made her stand by that decision and literally decides to become evil just to get her kids back, even if it took her nearly killing her alternate self. And look, bro, I'm just gonna say it, her kids can't be all that special. If my parents ever had the opportunity to get away from my annoying ass for a month, then they would 1,000,000% take it. But anyway, Wanda tells Strange that her decision to do whatever she did was no different than whenever Strange gave the time stone to Thanos, and like, what the fuck? My breedable baddie. Strange had to do that because how many times did he look into it to see all their plans being put into action? Over 14 million? Okay, and how many of those plans worked? Oh, one? Strange needed to do this because it was all he could do. You just want your kids back because you miss collecting the child support checks. But at this point, Wanda believes she's so much in the right as she's been under the influence of the Darkhold, and you can clearly tell because she has the diabetes fingers. And then we see Wanda just going fucking lethal. She effortlessly takes down sorcerers with years of training who swore to protect Kamar-Taj and humiliates Wong by having him held up like this to torture him. I mean, shit, if she had me in motion like that for other reasons, I wouldn't be complaining. I'm not gonna lie. It'd be a dream come true for me, bro. And later on, whenever she takes a little stroll to the Illuminati, she begins eliminating each member one by one, each death more gruesome than the next, and I've actually never seen a more gruesome death than whatever she did to Black Bolt here. Bro, she gave him the O-Father treatment from The Boys. But once again, the fact that Wanda just like justified everything she did here in order to get her kids back is just crazy, bro. Like, she of course had to have known that what she did was like the tiniest bit of wrong, even while possessed by the Darkhold. I mean, shit, if I killed someone like this, then I'd also be reflecting on my ethics and humanity, thinking that I've gone too far. But someone who definitely did not care about their actions, while not even being influenced by anything, had to have been Ego. Now, Ego's master plan was somewhat on the larger scale of world domination, nothing we haven't seen before, as he simply wanted to reinvent the universe in his own image. You know, we've all wanted to do something like that at some point. There's something here that everyone wishes they could change. I'd bring back the Choco Taco realistically, gone but not forgotten, but the way he had to enact this plan wasn't just where one line was drawn. This dude needed to be detained by Officer Earl himself for what he did, because his plan was not only sinister, it was straight up inhuman, bro. So for context, Ego would travel across the galaxy for decades to get busy with women and have children with them in hopes that his kids would inherit his celestial DNA. Alright, nothing inherently bad so far, until you realize what he would do to the ones who didn't inherit his powers. And let's just say, they weren't going to be playing GTA 6 when it comes out, bro. But for the ones who did inherit his powers, like Peter for example, they would serve as an eternal power source for Ego to drain energy from to give him strength to reinvent the universe? Alright bro, someone has to intervene here. What I just read was nothing short of the acts of literal abuse, slavery, and unaliving. This man needs to be put in a timeout respectfully. And on top of all that horror, there's also what he did to Peter's mom, which cements him as one of the worst villains in the MCU. See, he genuinely loved her, but realized that her just being alive would distract him from taking over the world because, I don't know, she was so damn beautiful that he couldn't help but plow or something. I don't know. So what did he do? Did he eventually move on from her? Did he ask Mantis to wipe his memory of ever even knowing her to keep himself fully motivated? Yeah, I bet some of you didn't even know she could do that. But the answer is a resounding no. And what this psycho really did was plant a tumor in her brain to kill her slowly in front of Peter, traumatizing him as a child.
Daddy, chill.
Oh my lord. Never in my 22 years on this planet have I ever heard or even seen something so immoral and downright criminal. Bro, if Ego dealt with the same court system that put Diddy away for his crimes, then he'd be given like 6 years in prison on good behavior and a lollipop for what he did. But yeah, we're reaching a higher point on this list. And next up we have Darben.
Who?
No, I'm just kidding. We have the green f***ing Goblin. Honestly, the next two villains are somewhat interchangeable, but I do think Goblin ranks a tiny bit lower. Don't worry, I'm not saying that he's a saint. Like, he still killed people, let's not forget that. Now, I'm only going to be going based off his actions whenever he pulled up to the MCU in No Way Home, and don't worry, that movie is most definitely where he shined throughout all of his appearances. Norman's descent into the Goblin in No Way Home was very gradual and very questioning, because up until we see him fully under the Goblin's control again, we see him allied with Peter and even willing to help him in curing the other villains, so he seems to be alright at the moment. But I'm over here thinking, nah, this can't be Norman. Like, we've seen him act out the same friendly illusion BS in the past, and that's just what went down. And shout out to Peter Spider-Sense for alerting him on this. I need to get on that shit for real. But the cat's out of the bag, the Goblin fully takes over Norman, and he and Peter begin duking it out so violently that I didn't think Peter would survive. Even though Spider-Man is the main character, but he not only gets Peter down to 1 HP like it's Pokemon, but he disrespects him by planting his foot on his neck like an animal. And just when you think Peter's had enough, yes, you saw that correctly. His glider gives Aunt May the meanest back shot I've ever seen. Shit's enough to make Johnny Sins jealous, bro. And throughout the rest of the movie, he's just constantly causing more chaos and making Peter's life more hell. We see Peter fully questioning his morals by wanting to put him in the dirt. And the Goblin was so close to being responsible for MJ's death as well. But what makes him absolutely irredeemable was whenever he and Peter have their final fight and not only hits Toby's Peter with the back fade, but then proceeds to mock Peter over him killing his aunt, saying Peter was the one that really killed her. And I'm with Peter for being mere moments away from sending Goblin packing. If the person that killed my loved one began hitting the gritty on me, they're not living to see tomorrow, bro. But then Peter just cures him with the antidote. A bit anticlimactic for someone who deserves so much worse like the Goblin, but it was never really Norman who did all of this, and I know Peter was gritting his teeth together whenever he cured him while his humanity was being held together by a thread. But even though the Goblin was bad, I strongly believe the worst is and has to be Hela. Now, I feel the best way to describe Hela is the ultimate mixture of all the villains stated here today. Like, I'm not joking when I say she is the worst of the worst, and I'd still smash. Her very first confrontation against Loki and Thor had Loki shitting his pants, the villain of the first Avengers movie who had an entire army at his disposal. But I'm not gonna lie, if I saw someone this fine approaching me, I'd lose all sensations and control over my body too. So Odin literally raised Hela to be a killer from a young age to conquer the 9 realms until she got a little too carried away and her whole character became about killing. And we see that the moment she returns to Asgard after being freed from hell. And bro, just the concept of her needing to be banished to hell because she was so evil and psychotic that a place like hell was only fitting to leave her is genuinely nuts, bro. Like, her lore is on a different level. And like I said, the second she returned to Asgard, it was on sight from there. She kills Thor's closest boys and she treats it like a game, bro. She didn't even look like she cared all that much. It's crazy. Like, bro, even whenever she cut out Thor's eye, she just joked about that shit moments after, like she's the Joker, bro. But the craziest part about all of this is whenever Thor realizes the only way to truly defeat Hela once and for all is to literally surrender their home to her and have it destroyed. Like, that's how you deal with a cockroach, bro. The second I see one of them in my house, they can have my wallet, keys, everything else, as I'm about to light my house on fire to destroy them. And even whenever they release the literal demon himself to destroy Hela and Asgard, she's still holding her own against him until she gets hit by the nastiest downward stab that I've personally ever seen, killing her for good. But there's some people that doubt this, saying that she actually teleported in this shot right here, but hey, that's up for interpretation. But think about it, she was just as unhinged as Green Goblin, just as powerful as Wanda, just as ruthless and cold as Ultron, and she was essentially a god like Ego. If that's not enough of a reason to consider her the worst of the worst villain in the entire MCU, then I don't know what is. But yeah, that's it for me. I absolutely smashed both Hela and Wanda, and I'll see y'all in the next one. Peace!